Right, all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, double honours to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and salutation to the Akim pushing this word in truth and sincerity. Got a bit of time off for work, getting my van fixed, so this is a little lesson. I just saw this correspondence on the news, and it's all biblical, so here we go.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, partnering with the Federal Communication Commission, will have a national test of the emergency alert system.
Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. You're watching AMTV, Alternative Media Television. And I've got some interesting reports today. It's been a strange weekend. There's been kind of a confluence of events, even here locally. In fact, my neighbor approached me from across the street this week and said, hey, I'm trying to pretend like everything's normal, but my husband's stuck at the airport. They shut down Terminal 4 of Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport because allegedly there was a unattended car parked and there was a potential bomb threat at Phoenix Sky Harbor. And he was kept there for several hours, I think about 4 hours. Nobody was allowed to leave. People actually acted pretty calmly, but there were reports that came out. In fact, I tweeted this on Twitter, and I really didn't see a lot from the mainstream media, that eyewitnesses say, unconfirmed reports, that they heard random explosions for 3 hours at the Phoenix airport. Since the events, I have yet to confirm this with my neighbor, who just kind of let him be after experiencing that delay for 4 hours at the airport, and thankfully everything was okay. But that's not even really the thread of today's story. The point I'm making with this is there are a series of events, strange events, taking place in the United States of America. And it seems that most Americans are missing it, whether or not these are natural events, like we are seeing with Hurricane Florence right now. And although thankfully it has died down to a Category 1 storm, we are still seeing epic flooding, unlike anything that we have ever seen. A lady just lost her baby, about a 1-year-old. She was trying to hold on to him and couldn't hold on it any longer, and the kid tragically lost his life. They just recovered his body. The first death also included another mother and an infant. Tragically died. The point I'm trying to make here is we have all of these strange weather events, and it is a fact, by the way, that the frequency of these types of events, these floodings, these hurricanes, these typhoons, have doubled since I was a kid, since the 1980s or the 1990s. So we're seeing a confluence of events with increased frequency. And we're also seeing a lot of drills, which concerns me gravely. And I am shocked that the mainstream media has not really been reporting this, and I'm also shocked that more people aren't talking about it. It's really incredible. So let's get to the heart of today's story. A presidential alert is set to affect every American cell phone this Thursday, just a couple of days. It's going to be sent by the president himself, Washington, D.C., and they're calling it a test. This is an emergency alert test. It's a drill being launched by FEMA in coordination with the White House, and the President of the United States are testing this emergency response and alert system on Thursday, so just a couple of days from now. Now, of course, we're familiar with seeing these tests from time to time on television. However, we have yet to see this via a presidential emergency alert coming directly to a cell phone. It's funny because I've talked about this internally with friends and family, or people here at studio for years, talking about, we're going to wake up one of these days, we're going to get an alert, and all hell, God forbid, is about to break loose. Why is this significant?
No, not God forbid.
I'm going to get to the story in a second. This is significant because a lot of these drills actually coordinate and correlate with real live events. And I have a series of examples, many examples, to give you today. So let's dig into the story. Presidential alert, FEMA to test emergency alert system this week, on Thursday. You'll soon be getting a message on your phone from the President of the United States, whether you are a supporter or not. This is CNN, which also can't be trusted. Fake news. It's not a political message, but an emergency test message sent from President Donald Trump as part of the Federal Emergency Management Agency's system to warn the public in cases of national emergencies. What could they potentially be front-running? What are they trying to tell us little people? A majority of cell phone users will receive an alert on Thursday from Verizon or T-Mobile or any of these major providers on September 20th with the header, quote, presidential alert, and the message, quote, this is a test of the National Wireless Emergency Alert System. No action is needed, end quote. Now, of course, they would put out a test or a real alert, in this case, in the midst of a nuclear attack, God forbid, on our shores, in the midst of an extreme weather event, in the midst of some kind of terror
on every side
act or terrorist event like we saw on September 11, 2001, or potentially something far worse. If it was an EMP, they probably wouldn't have a chance to send out an alert because, again, unless your phone was stored away in a microwave or a Faraday cage, you would have no access to any kind of technology whatsoever. WEA was technically launched in April 2012, but this will be the first time FEMA has tested the system on the presidential level and hopes to work out the kinks. Now, they also go to say that this is normal, that they do this every 3 years, yet, cell phones have been out for more than a decade, right? I remember my father used to have one in his car. It was like this big thing. He was one of the first people to have one. It was like, hello? The thing could barely charge. They say they do this every 3 years, yet we have never, let me repeat, never had a FEMA emergency alert presidential test sent to a cell phone as long as I've been alive. So they're suggesting it's normal and that they do it every 2 to 3 years, yet they've never done it before. And why do I think this should be taken seriously? And this is for you to decide, is because many of these drills, let me repeat, coordinate and correlate with real life events, real life emergency alerts, and real life emergency events. I'll get to some of these examples in a minute. Presidential alert is one of 3 kinds of alerts in FEMA's WEA system, which also notifies the public about extreme weather and missing children, also known as Amber Alerts, which
that's what the Patriot Act was
about, man. You can expect to see the alert pop up on your phone at approximately 2:18 p.m. Eastern Time. So adjust your clock so as long as you have your phone turned on or within a range of a cell tower, and if your wireless provider is part of the WEA system, you'll get the text. Now, you can't turn it off, you can't opt out, so not only is there going to be just a massive triggering of the left, which is kind of funny in and of itself, getting a direct text message from the president, it also raises eyebrows. So let me get into the specifics of other drills being run at the same time as the real event, the real emergency, the real terrorist attack actually takes place. The perfect example, the biggest example, is September 11, 2001. And this is according to Wikipedia, which of course is it's the statist dictionary service, which they whitewash all of our history. This is according to them. United States government operations and exercises on September 11, 2001. The North American Aerospace Defense Command, otherwise known as NORAD, was involved in an ongoing operation on September 11, 2001 during the actual attack in New York City, which involved deploying fighter aircraft to northwestern North America. The U.S. military and NORAD had also planned to conduct several military exercises, and a drill was being held by the National Reconnaissance Office, a Department of Defense, DoD agency. The operations, exercises, and drills were all canceled following the September 11th attacks. So a drill, like they said, was just a test. It was a drill. It was to prepare. It was actually taking place during the actual tragic events on September 11, 2001, and then had to be canceled. Some people would reference this as a PSYOP, psychological operations and psychological warfare. And I think very likely, this is my opinion, and my opinion only, this presidential alert test on Thursday is a PSYOP, is psychological warfare, and actually worries me immensely, tremendously. Ongoing military operations, again, this is according to Wikipedia. Operation Northern Vigilance was a NORAD operation which involved deploying fighter aircraft to locations in Alaska and northern Canada in order to simulate a hijacking, sounds familiar, situation, including terrorist pilots. Well, that sounds familiar, because that's exactly what happened September 11, 2001. They were running a drill. It was an emergency alert test that turned out to be reality because it was a psychological operation. It was a PSYOP. The operation was a response to a Russian exercise in which long-range bombers were dispatched to Russia's high north. The operation was 1 part simulation, 1 part real world. 1 part real world. So you notice we get these simulations at the same time the real world event actually takes place. And this is why we should be concern. We also saw this in Hawaii very recently. Hawaiians were so fearful they got an emergency alert text on their cell phone of an incoming intercontinental ballistic nuclear warhead missile about to hit the islands and America. In fact, Hawaiians were throwing their children literally down storm drains because they thought that the end was near. Now, of course, the mainstream media told us it was an accident. It was just a fat finger, they said. Yeah, like there's not protocol and multiple levels and layers of security before somebody just accidentally, hits a button and sends an emergency warning, like this is expected to be believed, that a nuke is on its way to the islands. Not to mention, we think of what's happened in years past, of course, with the tragic bombing of Pearl Harbor in Honolulu, and of course our inevitable entrance into World War II, which was a very tragic war in and of itself, which cost millions and millions of people their lives. Of course, they expect you to believe all this, but at the same time, the individual, and I reported on this extensively when it happened, because I have family there. Okay, I got a text message from my dad. He had a beer in his hand. He was like, well, if this is the end, this is the end.
Show you that crime
he's relaxed. He's like, I've lived a good life. Hawaii false missile alert sender, the same guy they said did this by accident, says no. This is according to CNN, the fake news. His words, not mine. Says he thought the drill was real. Did you hear what I just said? It wasn't an accident. He thought the drill was real, according to the actual person involved, who allegedly accidentally, see, it wasn't an accident. He thought it was real, according to CNN and the fake news. I'm not going to go into the article too much. Again, they blurred him out, blacked out his face. But again, that was another psychological operation, or could have been, in my opinion, an actual real event. Real preparation for something that maybe could have been shot down. In fact, who knows? We'll never really know the truth. But we do know that these events coordinate and correlate, the drills do, the simulations, with real life, God forbid, attacks, terrorist events, war, and other types of national emergencies. So why now? What do they know that we don't? Why are they suddenly sending us an emergency text alert through their system, FEMA is, on Thursday? Why? What's the significance now? Does it have anything to do with the giant war games that are being participated in right now with Russia and China? In fact, some of these images are just incredible. The tanks, the firepower, the air power, as we see China and Russia literally team up in preparation to wage war against the West here in the United States. I mean, could it have anything to do with that? Could have anything to do with our artificial economy, which has gone straight up for the last decade, over 10 years, through multi-trillion-dollar bailouts, artificial stimulus, and 0% interest rates? Could it be possible that history maybe isn't repeating itself, but as Mark Twain once said, is rhyming, and that war is about to actually hit, and these, God forbid, tragic events might strike our soil? Again, this is what they're doing. This is not an opinion. They're the ones running the drills in coordination and correlation with real life events. This is what's actually happening. Okay, they're really going to send you a text message on Thursday. You need to ask why. Why? What do they know that you don't? And the American people need to be asking questions. This is another example, and I could give dozens. So I'm not going to give all of them today because I could be up here for well over an hour, maybe a couple of hours, giving you all the examples when they're running simulations and it turns out to be real. We see this with a lot of shootings, tragically, that have happened recently. One example, 60, this is just one of
68
dozens,
and 4.
Hundreds
Make
of
their
different
own mouth to
examples
fall
that we
upon
could give. And I
themselves.
encourage you, put your comment question in the box and add the other examples, because there's so many I've lost count since I've been doing this over the last decade. But here's a perfect example. Days after the Capital Gazette covered Annapolis active shooter drill, a real gunman came in and started shooting people up and targeting the newsroom itself. Just another example of a drill before and or during, as was the case September 11th, with an actual event actually taking place. Days after Capital Gazette covered Annapolis active shooter drill, gunman targets newsroom. The Annapolis Police Department and Annapolis Fire Department held a joint active shooter training on June 22nd, and then a few days after, of course, the shooting actually occurred. 5 dead in Annapolis after gunmen opened fire at Capital Gazette newspaper office. You can read this for yourself. We'll put the links here if you want to look it up. And then again, I'd like to hear your examples because there's too many to count and too many to list. Also recently here in Arizona, they held a drill. We also reported on this several months ago, where Arizona has been preparing for a statewide mass evacuation of up to potentially maybe 500,000 Californians. In the event of some kind of tragedy, emergency alert, earthquake, God really knows. We have no idea. But in fact, our cameraman behind us here, Alex, your mom, in fact, we were looking for where this was actually taking place, somewhere where she was located or something like that, where they were prepping some of these camps and these shelters for this was a drill that they ran a couple of months ago. I think it was, what does it say here, in May, where Arizona is prepping for a mass exodus of somewhere between 300 and 500,000 Californians in a worst case scenario. Again, just another drill that might, God forbid, become our worst nightmare and potentially reality. Here's another corroborating report. FEMA is secretly preparing to evacuate California. You can read this here for yourself. As CBS LA's Elsa Ramon reports, Arizona is holding a practice run just outside of Phoenix, preparing for up to 400,000 evacuees from California. What, again, does the government know? What do they know that you don't? What are they prepping for? Why are they running these drills? And how come every time they run a drill, it seems like the actual event happens? As in just a few examples, and there are many examples that I just mentioned. Another article here says the big one, this is from LA Times, and no, I do not want to subscribe. The big one could leave 250,000 to 400,000 refugees in California. Where will they go? So I'm going to highlight just this story today and probably do a follow-up video because there's a few other items in the news. But I want to hear from you. What do you think? Should we be concerned? Okay, you need to think this through. You need to critically think. This is why I'm constantly telling you to prep. It can be natural events, like what we see with Hurricane Florence. We saw this with Hurricane Harvey. We saw this with Irma. We saw this with Maria. We saw this with Puerto Rico. We see it again and again and again. Or it could be, God forbid, these other events that we've experienced throughout our recent history, whether or not it's September 11th, when they are also holding drills on the same day, the exact same day of the actual terror attack. And now, conveniently, at a time of increased tensions geopolitically, and whether or not, it really doesn't matter if you're on the right or left, we're constantly being told that Russia interfered with the election, there's all this hacking and stuff going on, this is America's enemies. At the same time, it seems like these conflagration of events are growing in size, almost like we're boiling a frog and we're reaching this boiling point where we're just about to step off the edge of a cliff. Again, these war games are actually occurring. We haven't seen anything like this since the Cold War, since Americans and many baby boomers tuning in were told to get underneath their desks before, God forbid, a nuke went off in your city. Now we have, for the first time ever, a presidential alert that I'm aware of at least, FEMA to test emergency alert system on Thursday next week. Again, we've seen this whether or not it was with a accident, even though the guy that actually was the one that supposedly committed the accident says it wasn't an accident, he thought it was real. Again, do I have to point this stuff out again? Here he is, right here. No, he thought it was real, not a drill. We had this with a simulation in Hawaii, a potential intercontinental ballistic missile nuke attack, and now we are getting it with the presidential alert sent by President Donald Trump at a time in American history when we are due. It is anybody's guess what is next. Make sure you share this video, get it out everywhere, make it viral. It's up to you to get it out to your friends and family. Warn them ahead of time, because it might scare a lot of people getting this message. Because I have not seen this really being portrayed in the media. I don't see anybody talking about it. I don't see it anywhere. You're hearing it here first. This is very, very concerning. It is another reason to prep. Always stay vigilant, my friends, and be prepared. Also, I want to remind everybody, and God bless everybody, thank you for tuning in and tuning into our live webinar. Last week, we just put out a brand new course, How to Profit with Gold and Silver. These are things that I'm doing for my own personal
gold and
portfolio.
silver shall
How
not
to profit
save them,
when
man.
these disruptions actually occur. I mean, imagine, for example, if you knew prior to 08 or 09 that the stock market was going to proceed to lose half of its value. How much could have that saved you?
His wealth
Anger
is going
and
to do
anguish
something for you,
and
man.
agony.
What did it say? Riches profiteth nothing
Lose their homes and
in the
bankruptcy and all
day
these
of
kinds of things. We
destruction, or the
detail
day
this
of the
in the
Most
course.
High.
I'm limiting it
This man
to
is
just a
devil.
few seats. We've had a big response thus far. So make sure you take advantage of that. Click the link below, join it. It's very easy to do. You can also go to amtvgold.com. Again, learn everything you need to know about how to prepare. Whether or not this is gold, silver, precious metals, or your food storage needs, or water filters, water filtration, or really anything that you would need. Peace of mind, self-defense. These are the things that you need to be thinking about at a time when these psychological operations are occurring. And we haven't seen anything like this, well, since the outbreak of World War II. I'm Christopher Green. Get out everywhere. Make it viral, hard-hitting, and in your face. Of course, this is AMTV, Alternative Media Television.
Right, there it is, man. We got a meeting there, you know. Murder, she wrote. Yeah, so...
Okay,
like
so
to
just
say
to make
all
things
praises
even
to
more
Yahweh,
confusing, after
Bahashim,
the shooting
Yahweh
of this
Shai.
video, FEMA and the president
Double honors
announced
to the
that due to
apostles and
severe
elders of Great Millstone, who taught us this word in truth and sincerity, and double honors, and salutation to the Akim, man, on the highways and the hedges, yeah, pushing this word. And Kwam Yasharallah, man, we're soon out of here, man, and that's a beautiful thing.